When you hear the words Nebraska athletics, the first thing that comes to mind is the Scott Frost debacle and the football team continuing to struggle as his tenure seems to be waning. And for all the loyal Huskers out there, I wish that was where the story ended. But turns out, it's only where it begins. Yes, Nebraska's struggling in football. They're 15-30 under Frost, and after stumbling out of the gate against Northwestern, it seems the times haven't changed. And one would think that Nebraska fans would have somewhat of a reprieve during the offseason, but that isn't the case either. The basketball team is just 24-67 over the last 3 years under Fred Hoiberg, which is a little worse percentage-wise than the football team. Now, they've been struggling so badly that they restructured Hoiberg's buyout from $18 million to $11 million, dropped his salary by $250,000, and also forfeited $500,000 in bonuses. The two major sports have combined to go an atrocious 39-97 collectively, which, considering the amount of following, resources, passion, and lack of a pro team in the state, is astounding. Now, Nebraska fans have been let down time and time again, and any fan worth their salt can empathize with the fan base. But Husker fans don't want your empathy. They want results, and better yet, they deserve it. Nebraska's always had quality baseball teams as well. Hell, the World Series is in Omaha. But even on the diamond, the Huskers have come up short recently and haven't made it to Omaha or even a super regional since 2005. Now, while these numbers bring up doom and gloom, and rightfully so, I do want to give Huskers fans some hope. Sports are cyclical. Teams have their time in the sun and in the darkness, and this too shall pass. You will have multiple products in major sports category that you can rely on for more than disappointment at some point. And the struggle makes the good times that much better. I know it's hard right now and there seems to be no end in sight, but success is always one good hire away. And with the cachet that Nebraska has, the door's pretty much always open. I don't buy the Nebraska's gonna be bad forever or Nebraska just can't do what it used to lines. They just haven't found the right person to lead. Was joining the Big Ten a good idea? Probably not. But the field is still 100 yards long and 53 1/3 yards wide. The goal is still at 10 feet, and the mound hasn't moved. So the opportunities are still there. A good Nebraska is good for college athletics. The people love Nebraska, not just the football, basketball, or baseball team. The Huskers will be back at some point. And when that happens, watch out. Because once you lose grip, the minute you get it back, it's 10 times tighter. The Scott Frost situation is a problem, but when you really look at the numbers, and I'm not talking about the periphery sports, and I'm not saying they're not important. Gymnastics, softball, that stuff. But the major three sports, if you're a Nebraska fan, man, it's just been a cycle of doom and gloom. I mean, you're 15-30 in your last 45 in football, 27-64 or whatever it is in basketball, and haven't done anything in baseball in a while? I mean, Cone, how much is enough?
First of all, kudos to you for those stats and talking about all of the sports. I wasn't even thinking about that in terms of Nebraska basketball and the way that they've struggled too. I'll just stick to football for now and just say, I have so much respect for Nebraska and for Nebraska fans. And I just draw on my own experience. It's not that dissimilar to the situation with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, especially if you take this previous season away, where you had a program that was, could win 9 or 10 games, but wasn't winning championships, wasn't necessarily beating your rival, and the head coach was a former star quarterback. One of your guys, the guy that you wanted to bring in, and obviously Scott Frost had that one great season at Central Florida. For Nebraska fans, I think it is time to move on now, though. It was the right decision, I think, to bring Scott Frost back. The whole world changed during COVID. That was sort of an anomaly. Last year, didn't get the job done at 3-9, but, we were all talking in the offseason, when you lose that many games by one score, maybe it is just a personnel situation. Maybe in the age of the transfer portal, Scott Frost can get in there, really do what he needs to flip this program. Unfortunately, I know this is only one loss, but it is another close loss for Nebraska on foreign soil against Northwestern. And to me, what was most disappointing, like I said on Monday, was Scott Frost's comments after the game.
Yeah.
Because I thought the best thing Nebraska had going for him last Saturday was the offense, especially through the air in the first half with what Mark Whipple was able to do. So to come out and to criticize them on any front, I thought was very disappointing.
I thought it was too. And if you go back and look at that game, we talked about this on Monday when we were reviewing it. They made no adjustments defensively. Absolutely no adjustments defensively. There is no reason that Northwestern should have played at the consistent level and were able to stay ahead of the chain so much because Nebraska was predictable. But if you're going to be predictable in the first half, adjust in the second half. To me, they scored enough points to win. I thought the offense played good enough. The fact you let Northwestern go up and down the field, you called the onside kick. Number one, Scott, the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
It's how can you sit there and look at your players as a man and say, you need to be accountable, you need to take responsibility the Nebraska way, yet you're going to sit up there in front of everybody and throw guys under the bus instead of yourself. That's why you're going to get fired, and you should get fired. And if you go look at UCF, they really had one good year. Scott Frost, to me, is Milli Vanilli. He's Milli Vanilli.
One winning season.
He had a one-hit wonder. One-hit wonder, they got hot, had the right personnel out there, and just because he was a good player, and that's a very common misconception. Whenever you put coaches or former players into the bucket of, well, he's a former player, so he's going to be a great coach, or he's a former player, he's not going to be a great coach. They're individual people.
Yeah.
While it may help a little bit, being a former player or a former great player, like for Scott Frost, to keep you kind of hanging around, counting crows style, it doesn't determine how good of a coach you are. There are guys that weren't good players at all that are some of the best coaches that we've ever had. There are guys that are some of the best players we've ever seen that couldn't coach their way out of a paper bag. They just could do what they did because they were told what to do. They were physically able to do it. And it's one thing to take in information and then you go do it. It's a totally different thing to either come up with information or take information that you've learned and explain that and take complex things and put them into layman's terms or be able to communicate it effectively to an 18 to 22-year-old. That's a totally different skill set. Just because you can throw a good pass doesn't mean you can teach a good class.
Let me clarify one thing when I was saying that Nebraska was a little bit similar to Michigan and some other schools, some other blue blood programs which have kind of struggled in terms of they're winning 8, 9, 10 games a year but then moved on. I was talking about under the Bo Pelini.
Yeah, for sure.
Era, obviously.
Well, Frank Solich.
Felt the
I
need
go back
to move on.
Yeah.
And I understand it because, and that's why I say I respect Nebraska fans because they said, you know what? Not winning championships is not good enough. We don't want to win 9 or 10 games. We want the Eric Crouch days. We want the Tommy Frazier days. We want to win championships. So I respect that because Michigan was in a similar position. You see what Texas is trying to do. Southern Cal and Miami are both trying to make big moves now. So I understand that. But, you know, I think any Nebraska fan would like to have Bo Pelini back right now. And to your point about being a great player doesn't make you a great coach, I 100% agree with that. I like you pointed that out. Even though on the college level, I will say it can potentially add it can help in maybe recruiting. If you dominated for a school and people in the community know you, maybe you can keep some recruits closer to home. We talk about if Deion Sanders were to go back to Florida State, maybe he's not the greatest X's and O's coach of all time, right? But that would certainly have an effect.
Yeah, well, and being a head coach, Blaine, we've talked about this all the time. I mean, you look at guys like Tommy Tuberville, there's some examples.
Yeah.
Being a head coach, it's like being a CEO. So if you're the CEO of I don't know, Post Cereal, do you know exactly, can you go in there and make Lucky Charms from scratch? No, but you know how to hire people and you know how to run an organization. A head coach doesn't have to be the guy that goes in there and says, all right, we need to run this play, we need to make this adjustment, we need to do this pump block. It's great if they can help. You have some head coaches that can, like, you know, the Hugh Freezes and Lane Kiffins and Steve Sarkisians, guys that are coming up with a game plan. Then you have other guys that are like, all right, I know how to hire people. Most of it is knowing how to hire. Starts with coordinator. Really, it starts with a strength coach. Then it goes to coordinators. Then they go to assistants. If you know how to hire, you can coach for a long, long time and have a lot of success. Ed Orgeron, great example.
Yeah.
Dave Aranda and Joe Brady. You look like the smartest football coach in the world when those guys were the coordinators. All of a sudden they leave, and it looks like you don't know how many guys are supposed to be on offense and defense. So it's who you hire, when you hire them, that can define you as a head coach if you're not exactly an X's and O's, you know, savant, Blaine.
Well, I still think the worst thing for Nebraska was Scott Frost having that season at UCF. I mean, you always sometimes think the grass is green on the other side, and you have to realize how hard it is in college football to win 9 games.
Yeah.
To win 10 games. It's not easy, and you had that. And I know you want to go back to the glory days. Trust me, we all do. But it's a different time now. But the thing with Nebraska is this. We're in a time where transfers, recruiting, NIL, you can come back and actually
you get a guy house quick.
You could flip the house. You could find your hero somewhere you never thought he would be. your knight in shining armor is not Scott Frost.
Yeah.
And you keep letting it go and letting it go. Guys, you just lost to a mediocre Northwestern.
That's a bunch of accountants.
Yeah, a mediocre Northwestern team. You gave up 500-plus yards in that game against a Northwestern offense. I don't know if they've ever done that in the history of the school. You didn't make any adjustments in the second half. You got beat up front.
Yeah.
You're Nebraska, and you got beat up front against Northwestern. Something has to change. And I know well, we did this back then, we did that back then, but this isn't back then. Trust me, I'm an Auburn fan. There's a time when it was Auburn and LSU fighting for the top, and now every year it's Bama and Georgia. Times be a-changing, and either you're gonna adapt or you're gonna die. Nebraska's slowly spinning around the drain, and at this time right now, it's probably the most critical move Nebraska's gonna make in a long time. So that grass is not always greener. Go with somebody you know that can get the job done.
I'm with you. What's the Booster Club say?
Okay, let me get in here. I'm going to go ahead and put the poll out and let y'all know, let it sink in. Who wins the month in betting?
Ooh, so we're betting on who's winning
Exactly,
the month.
exactly. All right, let's go.
Meta.
We have a donation here from Drew Stein, $4.99.
Drew, what's up?
Drew says Scott Frost deserves his record at Nebraska due to his fake natty at UCF. Also,
True.
Nebraska deserves this for finding a good coach.
Yeah, and again, I blame the leadership there. Okay. I'm not blaming the family that lives in a rural town in Nebraska that's rooted for Nebraska their whole life, and their son's a Wonka, and his last name's like Steinenkugel or something. I'm not blaming them. They didn't fire Scott Frost or fire Bo Pelini. They were upset, yes. The leadership at Nebraska just can't get it right. And if it was one coach, if this was just football, and baseball was doing good, and basketball was doing good, you're like, all right, we'll get past this. It's everything. You look up, it's like being in the upside down in Stranger Things. There's not a good place, left, right, or straight. It's not a good place to look. And they don't have that one sport right now where they can look at and say, you know what? We'll rally behind this group. I don't know how the kite flying team's doing, or the debate team, or the hide and seek team is doing, but the major three sports, baseball, basketball, and football, it's a horrible time right now.
Well, they're definitely losing to Northwestern on the debate stage.
Oh, they're getting murdered.
I'm glad that Booster Club member brought that up, because I was talking to our director, Jonesy, yesterday. I said, some of this might be karma for Scott Frost claiming himself national champion at UCF. And Jonesy made a good point. He said, no, I don't want a coach who doesn't say that, because they went 13-0. They didn't get a chance. Like, how do you feel about that?
I mean,
and it was Auburn they beat in the bowl game, and a one-off when players opt out. Yeah, it's a complicated situation.
And it's not their fault, okay? If y'all want to go home and tell your grandparents and use the same ring company that made my high school class ring to make national championship rings, that's fine. But you're not recognized as the
Don't put it in the stadium, right?
Yeah, like you're self-proclaimed. That's like me. Like, right, I'll self-proclaim right now. I'm the best-looking guy in the world. How about that? Best-looking, smartest.
Should we hang a banner?
We should. Let's hang a banner. Best looking guy in the world, smartest guy in the world. I wish we'd have had the playoff then, but guess what would have happened? The same thing that happened in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. You would have ran into somebody that was just better than you, bigger than you, deeper than you, and they would have run base plays first 2 weeks of fall camp plays like Alabama ran against Cincinnati, and you'd have lost by 3 or 4 touchdowns. So I will never denounce somebody for having a good year. I'll never say, you know what, if I was the head coach of UCF, I know myself. I'd have been like, yeah, we won it. I know myself very well. But deep down, in places I don't want to talk about, I know we didn't win it. But it helps in recruiting. Hey, we're really the national champions. But again, if you go look at the track record, Scott Frost caught lightning in a bottle, man. And Nebraska said, you know what? We're not breaking through as national champions, but we look over there and Scott Frost, the prodigal son, is undefeated, being talked about as the next up. They had to go get him. They had to go get him.
It made sense.
They had to go get him. But guess what? It's like Billy Madison told old boy when he called Veronica Vaughn, you blew it. What else?
All right, Popcorn Man, he says, as someone born and raised in Nebraska, we're enjoying the quality of volleyball at the moment.
Yeah.
We haven't been the same since Pelini, and at least he won 9 games every season.
He did. Look, like I said, Bo Pelini's not winning a ton of friends.
I have his record right here.
He goes, read it. Read that. I want everybody to take a second and think about how bad Nebraska's been and look at the guy they fired.
9-4 with a Gator Bowl win. 10-4, Holiday Bowl win. 10-4, lost in the Holiday Bowl. 9-4, lost in the Capital One Bowl. 10-4, lost in the Capital One Bowl. 9-4, won the Gator Bowl. 9-4, and then lost in the Holiday Bowl.
So the first 2 years of Bo Pelini, he's won 4 more games than Nebraska has under the whole Scott Frost tenure. Really think about that. Let that one sink in for a second. I mean, again, like Blaine said, sometimes the grass isn't greener. Sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone, and now you do, and you're left with Scott Frost, who looks like, you know, one of the coaches on the NCAA game when you start out like on Road to Glory that's on high school, jacked, you know, guy was an unbelievable player, but it just hasn't worked, man. It just hasn't.
All right, Mike Nalrocky says, who is the guy that could bring Nebraska back?
I've said it multiple times. Who have I said, fellas? Y'all know who it is. You go from a Frost to a Freeze.
The marketing campaign.
Come on. Well, number one, that's copyrighted by Crain and Company. So go ahead, mess around and find out. But
how about Jamie Chadwell?
I think Jamie Chadwell.
We were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
Right? Great coach. I don't think they do that just based off the record with Scott Frost here. Going to a group of 5 coach. I mean, if there was one who was going to work, it was the one who went undefeated and played quarterback for you. I think they may have reservations about that just from the optics, not that Jamie Chadwell wouldn't be a good coach.
Yes, well, I think it's more of would Jamie Chadwell take that job right
You don't think he'd take that job?
No, I think look, Billy Napier looked around. He built up enough equity. He's like, I am waiting for the perfect job for me. Turned down Auburn because they wouldn't give him full control, and they looked at his list and laughed of demands, basically. Florida did. He goes there. Smart move. You can win big at Florida. Nebraska's in a tough spot right now. If I'm Jamie Chadwell, am I really pushing all my equity and all the stock that I've built up to go to Nebraska? I don't know. I think Hugh Freeze is a perfect fit because guess what? He'd take that job in a heartbeat after what went down. It's the redemption tour. I'm telling you guys right now, if if they fire Scott Frost and hire Hugh Freeze, 3 years, they're a problem. Like, they're a legitimate problem. They get a good DC in there. Man, I'm telling you, like if Auburn got rid of Harsin, Hugh Freeze is going to go somewhere. You can say what they want. I know it was ugly the way it went down. I think he's done his time a little bit. He's done a great job at Liberty. I know it's a great fit there. They've got more money than anybody realizes. But Hugh wants back in the big lights. And somebody's going to give him a chance. And when they do, he's going to dance. I promise you that. Hey, if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, go on over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. Check out Crain and Company live every day from 2 to 3 Central, where you can hear us spit it straight.